What is going on, everybody? It is Primitive here, and today we are going to be bringing you our debut episode of the Delicate Plan podcast. I am going to be here, Primitive. You all know me, this is the channel, but next to me, I'm going to be having Dante here, who's going to be hosting this podcast with me. Now, this is going to be a face that we haven't seen too much on the channel, so Dante, let's give the people an introduction to who you are, your channel, and what we're going to be doing here.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Dante. My channel, I'm gonna give my channel a shout out. It's the Digimon Laboratory. You can go ahead and find me on YouTube. I am glad to be here with the boy Primitive as usual.
Now, before we get into it, why don't you tell people about your history with the Digimon TCG? Just because I have given my bit multiple times on the channel. So, before we start talking about the card game itself, how long have you been playing the card game? What kind of decks do you like to play? And how are you feeling about BT6 right now?
Well, been playing the card game since the very first card dropped in the TCG. I've been a huge fan of the Digimon trading card game, even going back to when it first, got invented back in the early 2000s. Huge fan of Digimon overall. Um, I kind of specialize in blue and black decks. I kind of mess around with some green decks from here and there, but for the most part, I think those three colors are really colors I really focused on a lot. And as far as BT6, I think BT6 is just amazing. I think it really is just amazing compared to what we've been having in BT5. It's a fresher breath air from the staleness of Lord Nightmon.
Yeah, BT5 definitely had a lot of staleness from Lord Nightmon. Even as myself, who played a lot of Lord Nightmon and was able to have a bunch of good results with Lord Nightmon, I even got to a point where I was like, I cannot play this deck anymore. Switched over to Imperial Dramon for a bit, played the War Greymon for a bit. But looking at BT6, now it's obviously not going to be as stale as BT5 was when there was just pretty much Lord Nightmons going around everywhere, and they were really dominating a lot, especially in the local scene. The regional scene, not as much, saw a lot of green being able to go in there and counter the Lord Nightmons. But when we're looking at the BT6 regional meta right now and our local meta, we are seeing a lot of the same two decks, being both the Gabumon Bond of Friendship and Jesmon. So, what do you think about the dominance that we've been seeing from those two decks so far?
Well, we've been playing BT6, for about what week or two at our locals, even before the structure decks came out. Just the structure decks alone gave so much power to the Jesmon deck and gave Agumon it gave Agumon I mean Gabumon, not Agumon, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Also got support too. But Agumon just gave us so much more consistency. It's one of the things to where it made Gabumon just probably the best deck by far in this BT6 format.
Yeah, the starter deck cards, I mean, are insane. Cordramon is a card that honestly is just going to up the consistency of a lot of decks. We're going to be seeing it in a lot of blue decks. We're going to see it in decks that are security based. So that could be the
Hmm.
security control. It could be the security style D Brigade, which they're going to be running that. And so that's a card that's amazing. But obviously, the highest consistency card, the cards that a lot of people have been waiting for from the starter decks the most, are going to be the memory boost. So now that we have the memory boost, it really shifts off the meta a lot, I think, because a lot of decks that had lower consistency, like the Jesmon, not only are going to have their consistency upped by having yet another card that can search for the Jesmon next to the Huckmon, but they also have the extra memory, meaning that they can now go above 5 or 3 memory on a turn, which will give them the ability to go into Jesmon, Digivolve for Jesmon for 3, and then play either Delicate Plan or Judgment to be able to swing in, get those crazy swings going that we know Jesmon's going for. 3 swings twice, unsuspend,
Hmm.
go into Omnimon, all that craziness. Now, the red memory boosts are really helping there just because in the pre-starter deck format, they kind of had to Digivolve in Raising and wait one turn so that way they could promote next turn and then have the memory to be able to go into Delicate Plan and Judgment. As to where now with the memory boost, not only are we going to be able to search the cards that we need faster, but also just go one turn faster with our combo. So I really think that the memory boosts are probably one of the most meta warping cards, even though they are really simple in design.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I think the memory boost, even, just the generic memory boost in itself, just being able to gain two memory on a very crucial turn can make or break a lot of decks, make or break a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
You see red always want that extra memory or two to go into a big level sixes or possibly even their level sevens without trying to give their opponent too much memory, or possibly using some kind of blitz tactic to try to end the game. It's one of those things to where memory boost has really shifted. I agree with you. It has really shifted. I think just with the right now we have what the purple, the yellow, and
I mean, we have all of them now in the starter decks. All the starter decks come with the
yeah,
one. We
yeah,
just had the we had
yeah.
the
We have the
Howling
generic
Memory
one.
Boost, the Glaive. Oh
There you
yeah,
go,
yeah,
the
you're
blue
talking
one.
about, yeah. So yeah, we have the blue, the yellow, and the purple. Yeah, and those ones do have some impact. I do think the Howling Memory Boost is really good. Obviously, the Reinforced Memory Boost is just amazing, being able to recover and add a card to your hand. The Glaive Memory Boost, I think, is a little bit weaker of the three because it just kind of imitates Matt, being like the Memory Tamer and searching it back. But with the new ones being all kind of the same thing, it's kind of like each deck is going to be playing the same card in a way because they all are just the search for gain two. But how do you think the new blue, purple, and yellow memory boost stack up to the old ones? And do you think people are going to start playing those ones more, the searching, or do you think things like the reinforced memory boost and the howling memory boost are here to stay?
Let's see. I believe, the generic ones that we got out of the structure decks. I believe that when it comes to the purple memory boost, just playing the I believe it's the Grave Memory Boost,
Mm-hmm.
the one that came out of BT6. I believe that's more beneficial because now purple is turbulent through his deck so fast. By turn three, turn four, you can easily have half your deck in the trash.
Yeah.
So just getting that extra an extra Digimon back to your hand to possibly even combo off or to extend your chances even further. It's all it helps fix the RNG portion of purple to where it just wants to mill or discard or trash like so consistently.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the howling, I think the howling and the generic memory boost that we get in the structure disc, I think they're pretty equal. I think a lot of people will be leaning more towards the more generic one just because of the howling may not give that their blue deck the little oomph
Mm-hmm.
more to play that. But yellow is a huge cost having that sits cost for the memory boost. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It really is a lot, especially for yellow. So I think you're going to see a lot of yellow players shift over to the memory boost that came out the structure decks a little more than the one that came out of BT6.
Yeah. I think right now the like main, I guess, just yellow deck in general is kind of security control. That's
Hmm.
really taken advantage of, Magna Dramon and Lucamon, Salamon, all that recovery stuff. But the reinforced memory boost is obviously going to be a lot better in there just because they already play a lot of stuff and they are recovering. But when we look at more non-controlly decks like, let's say, Dynasmon, Mastamon, you're definitely going to probably be looking more towards the just yellow memory boost there because you don't really need to play six. I was playing the six drop memory boost. I was playing it in the Shine Greymon list just because there were a lot of cards that you could put in there. There are a bunch of tamers, so you can recover one and then put a tamer on top if your opponent swings in and be able to get a card to your hand. But now that we have the starter decks, just being able to play a memory boost that's going to search out pretty much any Digimon I need. I need maybe a rookie, maybe I need Shine Greymon. That's going to have a lot more consistency of being able to search the top four opposed to just searching the top two of the reinforce. So I definitely agree with you there that yellow decks for the most part are definitely going to be playing the yellow memory boost there, as to where like the security control lists are going to be playing the reinforced memory boost. Now with the howling memory boost to the blue memory boost, I do think that most players are going to gravitate towards the blue memory boost a little bit more. But the howling memory boost does have a lot of, I mean, upsides to it. It's kind of hard to say just because, like, the blue memory boost is a consistency card. Obviously, being able to search the top four, grab whatever Digimon that you need out of there is going to be a huge consistency card, and that's going to be a card that most decks want to play. But the howling memory boost, being able to trash the bottom of sources and then make something not be able to attack or block, does have value too in things like security control. Being able to stop an Ornismon, let's say, or a Zwart defeat from attacking could be very powerful. Or versus three Musketeers, you could trash the bottom of the gun Gundramon sources so that it can't attack or
Yep.
block. And then even like in Jesmon, being able to get rid of their inheritables, being able to get rid of their DP buffs or the security attack buffs are going to be also good as well. So that one I think is a little bit more up for debate on which one's going to be better because they both kind of have upsides and downsides. And
Right.
then with the purple memory boost, like you said, I do like the glaive there just because the cycling is going to go through. You do draw and mill so much with purple that I feel like searching the top four isn't going to be as important as to where if you just mill stuff, you can just grab whatever you want back from the trash.
Correct. Yeah, like perfect points. Also, I noticed with when it comes to security control, we have a few prominent security control players at our locals.
Yep.
I've been noticing they've been playing Tactical Retreat also
Hmm.
in the list too. Now that the core Dramon is coming out and letting them draw two, they can just Tactical Retreat, put them right back on top of security, so you hit it again, so
Yep.
they can dig a little further. Those work defeats are coming out and they're putting it right back. So it's one of those things to where the reinforced memory boost would be a lot better. So you can take the top two, look at which one you want to put on top, and if your opponent does hit it, you can then put it back on top to kind of get them in an endless loop
Hmm.
of keep on hitting the same card. And a lot of cards that security control do play is very, very detrimental to the opponent's board when it does hit the board.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the tactical retreat as well just has a fantastic security effect and just being able to basically just be a holy wave. So I do think the tactical retreats make a lot of sense in the post starter deck meta just because pre starter deck, the only really thing that you want to put on top is like Zwart Defeat when it comes out, which is something that I saw being tested by some of our security control players and then they kind of shied away from it. But now that we have Cordramon and Geogreymon and Zwart Defeat, the tactical
Hmm.
retreat definitely just takes over the Holy Wave slot as being that recovery source, as well as just being something that is cycle. I mean, security control normally has decent hand size because they're really only playing one card per turn and potentially drawing two cards per turn. But now with the Cordramon out there, they're pretty much going to have everything at all times. You're never really going to be able to play against a security control player and just kind of be hoping that they don't have the perfect cards because for the most part, they're pretty much just going to have everything always, especially now with the Cordramon into tactical retreat.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I believe that, second to Gobblebond, I think Security Control is most likely the second best deck in the format. It can really go toe to toe with a lot of other decks,
Mm-hmm.
just playing this normal game. I think with Gobblebond is kind of a 50-50. Just because if Gobblebond can, swing in for about 6, 7 attacks, you can then chip away at a lot of their memory. And Gobblebond does have recovery, and the aspect of they play hybrids and they can use their tamers as another attack.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the things to where Gobblebond is, in my opinion, is still just the best deck. But
Yeah.
when a close second, security control definitely has to be a close second.
So what do you think about like? So now that we're in post starter deck meta, Jessmons are popping up everywhere. Jessmon did win a regional, the online regional yesterday, by Dan Vang, and so there's going to be a lot of more Jessmon players, and Security Control does have the potential to like struggle versus Jessmon just because of the delicate plan, being able to shut down all their option cards. Now there's a lot of recovery in the list, so you can get up pretty early in a pretty high security stack, and we do have a lot more security Digimon now, so the Jessmons can go ahead and like swing in for like 4, 5, 6 checks, and you can still potentially survive, and then you can get out security Digimon and swing in for game. So it's kind of a 50-50 matchup, but I do think that the security controls are going to start to die down just a little bit as long as the Jessmons start to come back up, just because the delicate plans are a bit annoying. So how do you think like security control is going to stabilize now that there's going to be less Gabu Bond? Well, not less Gabu Bond, but there's going to be more matches versus Jessmon instead of it just being versus Three Musk and Gabu Bond.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Jessamine, it gave the Stardust really did give Jessamine a lot more power. Though the deck can be, bricky at times that if you don't set up a Jessamine by turn three, you're pretty much so far behind that, 7 times out of 10, you might end up losing that game.
Yeah.
But with Jessamine against security control, you might see security control start to shift more and dip into more different colors like purple or even black to just get those option cards to where once it does hit out of security and they don't have delicate plan behind it, it can really cripple their board. Or if they do draw it, they're able to actually use it to, break different boards and different things like that. Like you might even see, some security control players might dip into a little purple, and when their opponent attacks and attacks with a smaller Digimon, to try to weed some things out or to draw a card or possibly even gain a memory,
Mhm.
you might see them actually play, Trump swords or stuff like that just to hit the Digimon that has not attacked yet to mitigate the damage.
Yeah, I mean there are the Three Musketeer security control lists. A lot of the Three Musketeer lists that we see are a little bit more Digimon based, but there are the option based security control Three Musketeer lists where you're playing the Beelstarmon with the Trump swords and stuff. Right now, we're seeing a lot of players play more on the Sakuyamon type end, just to play around the Jesmon, so that when they promote, they do get the security attack -3, which will
Mhm.
slow them down. They'll have to either promote and then go for like low amount of checks if they have a bunch of security, or they'll have to use Judgment to swing over Sakuyamon. But once that Jesmon's on the board, it's open to just getting hit by a Wyvern's Breath, an Ultimate Flare, Iron Fisted Onslaught. I mean, there's so many things that can come at it. So I've seen a lot of players try to go towards the Sakuyamon package, but I do think that there's going to have to be something else besides Sakuyamon for that matchup. Like you said, maybe they have to try and go into some more option cards that are going to be more helpful in the early game. Maybe things like Nailbone and blockers could be something that's seen, just because the ability for Jesmon to be able to swing with piercing so much is gonna have, like with the delicate plan, you're gonna have to find a way to stop it going in for that final swing. So I could see potentially things like blockers coming in. There is the Three Musketeer list that play the Vilemon with the Nailbone, and then you can make it so if they don't have Judgment, then they just swing in for their multiple checks, and then once you get down to 0 security and they try to swing in for game, you can block there, because obviously they can't win the game with just piercing. They have to actually go in for the direct swing. So I think there's going to have to be a couple shifts from the security control decks to be able to adjust for the Jesmon meta, but from what I've seen, I do think that the inconsistencies of Jesmon might be what a lot of decks need to beat it. I am a little bit surprised seeing how many Jesmons are performing so well in so many tournaments, just because from when I've tested it myself and playing against many other players, I have found it to be a decently inconsistent deck. And if you don't get like the perfect stack with the security attack +1 Greymon and the Savior Huckmon, then the swinging for one time for like 2 or 3 checks can be a little bit underwhelming, and the early checks of the like Sistermon and the Huckmons are a little bit easy to deal with in this meta, because we have security control that's going to have like Ultimate Flare and Gavelchformer. Gabubond is playing blockers and Kendo Garuru and all that stuff to get rid of the early rookie checks there. So I do think that Jesmon is going to be popping up there. I do agree with you that security control is definitely in that. You say it's like number 2. I would say it's probably in that top 3. I don't know where I would put it at, but I do think that security control and Jesmon are definitely fighting for that second place spot, but I definitely still feel that Gabumon is pretty far ahead in the metagame right now and just being the most effective deck in pretty much every scenario.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I do think that security control would edge out Jesmine just for the simple fact that I think a lot of people have not adapted to Jesmine quite yet. Structure Decks and the TCG just came out this past weekend. A lot of people are seeing the full force of Jesmine and what it actually can do. We might even see some security control players, that's playing yellow and black. We might see them taking some alpha mons that might take in some fly bullets just to get that, the
Mm-hmm.
destruction on the actual Jesmon itself, or to make it to where none of their other Digimons can attack for the rest of the turn. Yeah, you can hit 4 or 5 security, but you can't swing for gain that turn. So yeah, we might see security control adapt a little more. This is why I give it a slight edge. When it comes to Justmon, I think Justmon is pretty linear, and once you find out how Justmon plays, you can really, make your adaptations around it. You can, kind of bait your Justmon opponent into playing a certain way right into your cards or anything or something like that.
Yeah, I do agree with you. One thing you said is that Jesmon is very linear. This was something that I talked about in BT5. I made a video about how to beat Rookie Rush, and that was a deck that a lot of people were having troubles with beating, including myself for a bit, until you just kind of realize that there's a lot of decks that really only do one thing. They kind of have one line of play. Jesmon kind of falls into that in the same way that Imperial Dramon kind of fell into that, where you
Mhm.
obviously can go for different lines of play. You can go for early checks with rookies and try to end off like with your big swing at the end. But the thing is you're building the deck mostly around your Jesmon and your Sister Mons, and so if you like don't hit those, then you're going to have a lot weaker. So when you're building into Jesmon, you just have to figure out, okay, they're going to build up Jesmon in raising and then swing, and then they're probably going to have just rookies play out early. So it's like, how do you play against that? Because they're not going to really be able to shift it up too crazy. Like, for example, with like Lord Nightmon. Lord Nightmon could do a lot of different things. It could rookie rush you,
Correct.
it could play Mastamon, it could play War Greymon, it could, I mean, like, there was just so many different variants that you could play. You could play the 4 Angelmons and the 4 Bushis, so it's more aggressive. You could play 3/Angemons with the War Growlmons and the Nightmons, so you just have removal. You could play
Or
high recovery.
Greymon.
You could play it was very versatile deck where you had a lot of open slots that could do different things, and you really only had to commit to like very few cards. You really just needed like the Nightmons, the Lord Nightmons, and like the Tamers and Blinding Ray. And then other than that, you could kind of just build it around how you wanted to. As to where with these decks, it's you have a lot smaller of a viable card pool, which is like I say with it's kind of like Imperial, where Imperial is like you build up into Imperial and then you swing. Obviously, you can go in early with like jamming Vmon and do stuff like that, but for the most part, when you're playing against Imperial, you can expect one of two things. They're either going to swing in with a bunch of rookies and then go into Imperial, or they're just going to have a big Imperial into Omni play. And the Jesmon's the same thing. They're either going to swing with a bunch of rookies early and then go into a big Jesmon play, or they're just going to do a Jesmon play into an Omnimon Blitz. So once you can build your deck around how to beat that, whether that's having some sort of defense for it within like blockers, or having extra recovery, or just having a faster game plan, beating them before they can get to it, because the thing with Jesmon is it does have some turns where it has to play very slow. Turns where you have to play like Tai Kamiya versus decks like Gabubond is a turn where you're not really developing anything and letting your opponent do stuff like that. So you have to keep in mind with Jesmon coming up that it is a little bit linear. I'm sure people are going to adapt as the metagame grows to be a little less linear, or try to add some new things into it. Like we have the Guilmon, Gallantmon from the new starter deck, and that could maybe
Mhm.
make some waves. But for the most part, I do think that the security control players are definitely not going to have an easy time beating Jesmon, but they have way more spots in their deck that they can change around to tech for that matchup, as to where Jesmon has like 3/5 of its deck, maybe even 4/5 of its deck around there are just automatically the same cards for most decks. Like they have to kind of be the same things, or else the deck's not going to work.
Yeah, I do agree. Yeah, just mine. It is pretty much like 40, like 35 to 40 cards in your deck. It's already a call. It's already accounted for.
Hmm.
And it's not really that much room to tech anything again, because between the system mons and the just mon, line up and putting the grave mons in there, or the for
Yeah.
Kendra mons to give the plus one
All the
secure.
Huckmon stuff, all the Sister Mons, the
Right.
Jessmons, the Tamers, the
Yeah.
Delicate Plans,
Keep
the
playing.
Judgments. I mean, a lot of the time, I mean, you probably have to play like Agunimons too, so those are already kind
Yeah.
of set up. So it's like when you really start to lay out a deck, like we were talking about this before we started. I have a Jessmon half built Jessmon deck laid out in front of me, and it's basically like 30 cards, and these are the cards that I feel like you have to put in a Jesmon deck, and then you start building from here. And I feel like there are some decks that are like that, but when you have a deck that's like that, you have just a lot less room to really build. Like with the Gabubon decks, they do kind of have a lot of cards that are really staple, but it's not as much. Like if you look at the topping Gabubon list, there's a lot of different stuff. There's a lot of lists that are playing a bunch of rookies. There's a lot of lists that are playing more champions. There's lists that are playing a bunch of tamers and hybrids. There's some lists that are playing less tamers and hybrids and playing more option cards. There are some that are playing the ancient Garurumon package. There's just, I mean, you can really build it a lot of different ways, which is what makes this deck, I feel like, so dominant is because you can't really go into it and expect the same thing every single time, because there are so many different things that you can change. Like if you're playing a Gabumon player who's playing high option cards, they're playing the Fork Kitus Breath, they're playing V Wing Blast, they're playing Hammer Sparks, they're playing Memory Boosts, well then you're going to want to play that a lot differently, because things like swinging into security are a lot scarier. But if your opponent's playing the more Digimon based package where they're playing 2-drop rookies, they're playing the Octomons and the Gorillamons, then those you're going to want to play around that a lot differently, and that's like a whole different game plan. So I want to transition here a little bit, because I do have a question that I want to talk to you about. We were talking about Jessamon, we're talking about security control, but what do you think about Agumon? Why is Agumon so low down there compared to Jessamon, or even just its compatriot Gabumon? What happened to Agumon?
I think Agumon, it's too much going on within the deck. With Agumon, you have to play the Agumon lineup, and then just so many different options when it comes to, the Greymons, playing the War Greymons, and it really is starved on memory. Because my opinion is, now that the memory boosts are in the game, we're gonna see a lot more colors like purple, like blue, like green, that has these memory blockers, or these Digimon that can block you from gaining memory outside of Tamers. You're going to see them be thrown to the deck at 3 and 4s now. And it's going to slow a lot of these decks down. Well, in red, there's not really inherently too many ways to gain memory outside the memory boost, or outside of just putting the memory tamers into play.
Yeah.
There's not too many, ways to doing that. And the Agumon really, really needs 4 or 5 memory to really be optimal. While Jessamon they can really work with 3, because of how the deck is already structured.
Yeah, because I mean, with Agumon, one, you have to have, like, in my opinion, I feel like you have to have the BT6 Agumon under there for it to really be big value. As to with the Gabumon, even if you just have a regular Gabumon, getting 2 checks with the Gabumon and bottom decking 2 things is still really good. I think one of the biggest flaws with Agumon, in my opinion, is that it's kind of easy to play around in a way. As when I was playing Agumon myself, one thing that I know has happened to me a lot is that I wanted to go into Bond, but my opponent would like have no Digimon on the board or something like that, and so you can't get that delete one of your opponent's Digimon to trash the top security. And then even if you do get that, you only get the 1 check if you don't have the Agumon underneath. And I think where Agumon really falls off is just that blue cards right now are just a little bit more universal. Gabumons themselves are a little bit better. We have the Draw Gabumon, which is obviously an amazing consistency card. We have the Tamer Searching Gabumon, which there is the Agumon version as well. But when you look at other blue cards, we have Hammer Spark, amazing card. We have Kakaitis Breath, very versatile card. It's obviously on par with Gaia Force, but being 1 less memory is very important. Being able to bounce to hand in some matchups is kind of important, opposed to going into the graveyard and stuff like that. I just think that Agumon itself has some limitations in its own deck. If you see a lot of the Agumon decks right now, they are playing a bunch of things like Gaia Force and the Atomic Blaster, which when you're playing that many option cards in your deck, you start to have hands where you open up a bunch of option cards that are kind of dead in your hand, and then if you hit that point with Agumon, then you're kind of going to be struggling for the to find some air, if you just have 2 Gaia Force and another option card in your hand, and you can't find your ties, you can't find any, like, no memory boost, then you're going to start to slow down. And even with the memory boost, the biggest problem I've seen with a lot of Agumon decks, we've even seen it in our own local meta with the Agumon players, is that they just seem to brick a lot, and it's from the low consistency cards, a lot of option cards that are really bricky because they're just high cost, or they aren't gonna, like, you don't want to Gaia Force a champion most of the time, and then Gabumon also has things like Kendo Garurumon, which has the ability to bounce back. The hybrid package, they have way more tamers that are like of higher viability. Like you have Tai, you have the 2 ties, or you have Marcus, but I mean, neither the Memory Tamer Tai or the Memory Tamer Marcus is going to come even close to Davis being able to search cards out and be a memory tamer. So I think Agubond, personally, I think it's fallen off just because it doesn't have as many good cards as Blue does right now, and also just the ability of being able to delete something to trash the top is a little less consistent than just being able to like with Gabubond, if your opponent doesn't have anything on the board, you don't just go like, oh, I don't want to go Gabubond because I don't want a bottom deck. You're just like, okay, well, I have the BT6 Gabumon here. I can swing potentially 3 checks, and that's going to be great, even if my opponent doesn't have anything on the board. But if you have the Agumon and you swing without the Agumon, you're like, okay, or you swing without deleting something, and let's just say you have the Agumon there. Well, you're trading 2 of your security for 2 of your opponent's security, which I think is just
It's
a
a one
little
for
bit
one.
scary. It's just like, yeah, it's a 1-for-1, as to where with the Gabumon, you have a much higher chance of getting the +1 on security there. And then also just the ability to be able to get rid of multiple Digimon does have a lot of use. The Agumon being able to pop one thing that's 13k or less is great if you're playing against Gundramon, for example. But if your opponent has 2 Grizzlymon on the board, well, then Gabumon's going to be more effective and stuff like that. So I think the Agumon is a little bit behind just on just card pool. Just the color itself doesn't have the consistency, and then the bond itself doesn't have the that extra oomph.
I do agree with that. Like we were saying earlier, I think red inherently just has a consistency issue. So Justmon inside its own archetype, it has built-in consistency where Justmon can bring a system mine out when they attach. If it's unsuspended, it can get a system mine out of from hand or from trash.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things to where it's more consistent. Even if you have to make crazy plays beforehand, you can still recover while Agumon, it doesn't have that consistency. Now, Gabumon also still have, tamers like Joe and Sora, to where if your opponent hard plays a
Mm-hmm.
Digimon, you gain 2 memory off of it. It's more memory for the Gabumon player to just go off on. And like I said, the card pool is too massive. It's too good. A lot of things in blue is cheaper than red, and they tend to do the same exact thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like red is starving itself while blue has enough memory or has cards that can give it enough memory to do whatever it wants.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to that, I really do think that you're gonna see a lot of red decks from this point forward. If Justmon is not really carrying the flagship for red, we might not see a lot of red decks until maybe you know and Emperor Greymon in BT8,
Mm-hmm.
carry that torch. Just for the simple fact that a lot of red decks are not really keeping up not really keeping up with the consistency that it needs to keep going. We might see some hybrid decks in BT7, but as far as a single archetype that just carries the flagship, Jesmon might be it for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think that's true. Red is one of those decks where going into EX1, it's not doing anything for me too much. I mean, there's a lot of other decks that, I mean, like blue, we're getting amazing cards. Like the Gabu Bond is getting buffed with the new
Hmm.
Gabumon. We're getting Ice Wall. Imperial comes back. We have
Yep.
Diaboromon with black. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that people are really excited for that I hear
Shinramon is
about.
getting way
Yeah,
more support.
Shinramon, like there's stuff that's going on, but I don't even really hear too much about Red and EX1. I mean, going into BT7, obviously things are going to get real wacky because we're going to start getting dual color cards. So who knows
Oh,
really how that's going to go when we're able to start combining colors. I mean, obviously we can look ahead and see what Japan's doing and all that stuff. But one thing that I've learned as an American player is that you should not look towards other regions for their metagame. We don't really know how the
mhm.
distribution thing's going to go out. We don't know when we're going to be on par. Japan had Starter Deck 7, Starter Deck 8, and BT5. We didn't have it until a couple weeks after BT6 came out, and BT6 came out a couple months later than it was supposed to. So, like, we could look ahead and see how Red is going to be built there. But I think you're, like, correct. At least for BT6 and BT7, I think Jessmon's going to be the way to go. I've seen the Jess Bond deck coming up a lot, the Jessmon Agumon deck, and I did build that myself, my own variant. I did play around with it, and honestly, it just felt like two inconsistent archetypes coming together to be one less inconsistent archetype. So as far as red goes, I definitely do feel that Jesmon is going to be carrying that torch for a few months for sure.
Yeah, I do agree with that. It's just crazy. I can just see EXO1. We might see a lot less Jesmon players because a lot of them might be shifting over to you know, Imperial.
Hmm.
Imperial Mon is going to be one of those decks to where from this point forward, it's always going to be relevant no matter what, maybe even top two decks.
Yeah.
When it comes to EXO1, BT7, the structure decks come out in BT7 like it's supposed to, you'll see Purple get a gigantic boost in what it's doing now. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Titanmon is a powerhouse, but mix that with Mastermind, Jorgus Evolution, it's a powerhouse. And the Imperial Mon just gets so much better with the Jorgus to where you can hit for 5, 6 security, checks with jamming,
Hmm.
where you really can't do anything like that. I really do think right now, how we see it right now is, with the meta, we really can't take from the OCG because around BT6, OCG really wasn't into security control. Security control is more of a TCG thing.
Hmm.
So it kind of worked our meta to where Jesmon has a viable home and can keep up because the security control is, top two, top three decks, and Jesmon can slap through each and every last one on security with no problem.
Hmm.
But we're gonna see a gigantic. We might not see that big of a shift in EXO1. We might see Imperial Dramon kind of combat and take that number two or number three spot behind Aguban.
Hmm.
I mean Gabuban, sorry.
Hmm.
But yeah, when it comes to BT7, that's when the entire meta just might shake up, and we might see blue become the top dog on three different levels
Yeah.
because the Magnet Garurumon is good. Um,
I
the
think
Waymon deck, the hybrids, just everything is so good. And then we have Ancient Beetlemon, which is also going to be a deck that gives green a new, breath of life.
yeah.
And can't forget about the Alpha Mons and the X antibody stuff. So BT7 is going to be a whole different meta, but we still might see Gobblebond withstand the test of time entering BT7 and even past that because of how potent it is.
And it's very fast. I do think that going into BT7, we will be moving on to like a new modern era of Digimon TCG. Just because I feel like going into BT7, a lot of the archetypes that we've seen um, in BT6 and like previous are gonna probably go away. We do see some stuff like security control is gonna always be around just by the like just how the game works. We do have security as our health source, so being able to manipulate that and use that as a resource is always going to be a thing. Rookie Rush is always going to be a thing in every card game ever. Playing things for cheap and attacking is always going to be a thing. But like outside of things like even Imperial Dramon's going to change. I'm sure Gabuban's going to change. Shine Greymon will still be a thing, but it's completely different in the way that we see it
Yes.
now. And so once BT7 comes around, I definitely think that it's going to shake things up, and that'll. I want to transition here because we are getting up on time here. So, what do you think about the state of the game? Like, what do you think going forward? We've seen up to now EX2 that we're going in. So, how do you think the game's health is going to be going in for the next 6 months, 8 months or so?
I think, let's see, next 8 months, so we probably hit BT8 here so about 6 to 8 months, we'll hit BT8 here
Hmm.
in the TCG. I think right now in BT6, it's a very healthy meta. While Gobblebond is the top dog, it can still be beat.
Hmm.
It's not like Lord Nightmon to where you play Lord Nightmon or you really don't play anything else outside of security control because you can't really outpace it.
Yeah, it was just like
Um,
green. We saw a lot of green coming up to try and take over Lord Nightmon because they were able to take advantage of the fact that you were going to be suspended. So they could either go Nidhogg, they could go Rafflesia, they could go Boncho. But green also had its troubles versus like Imperial and also versus Rookie Rush. And so it was very interesting there. So like it's definitely way healthier here in BT6, where it's like, yeah, Gabubond is obviously very potent, but as we can see, Jesmons are beating it. D Brigade did well. Like there are many ways to deal with it, opposed to like with BT6, where it was definitely probably one of our most unhealthiest formats that we're gonna see for a very long time. If it can really get any more unhealthy. Because it's hard to, like I said before, it's hard to tell off of the OCG just because things can change so much. Dynasmon Mastamon really made a big splash there. Or the, not Dynasmon Mastamon, sorry, the dual color Mastamon deck really made a big splash, but we don't really know if we're going to have the same format, so it's kind of hard to tell there, but I do agree. BT6 is looking pretty healthy.
Yeah, I think BT6 is very healthy. I even think going to EXO1 to where you get black boost, you get purple boost, you get, Imperial obviously gets its boost, but it's one of the things to where yellow might fall by the wayside as a color. We might not see yellow for, the next 2, 3 sets. But when entering BT7, if you're not playing, Jorge's Evolution, you're playing hybrids. If you're not playing
Yeah.
hybrids, you're playing Joker's Evolution. If you're not playing either one, you're not playing the game at all. Like the decks will evolve so much that it's way more balanced in BT7 coming up than it is in BT6. And we think BT6 is very healthy.
Hmm.
BT7 is going to be a very, very good splash of every color down the line. Maybe outside the realm of yellow, unless Shine Greymon can really get back and take that flagship and ride yellow.
Uh-huh.
But besides that, every color is going to have some viable deck that can go up against Gabubond and contest it. May not always beat it, may be on the losing end of it about 7 times out of 10, but you can still contest the deck.
Hmm.
So that's a very, very healthy spot. And you might see a lot of, Gabu Bond players switch over to Imperialmon EX1 or even BT7. So we might see a lot of, Gabu Bond die down and more Imperialmon because of the Jorgus deck is just straight crazy.
Yeah. I mean, ever since BT7 has been revealed and we've seen the starter decks, I have been nothing but excited for Imperial Dramon. I don't know if going into EX1 I'll switch off of Gabubon for Imperial Dramon for tournament purposes. I'll definitely be playing a bunch of Imperial Dramon for like in practice and for, like locals and stuff. But when it comes to regionals, I still think Gabubon's going to be a little bit stronger there. But I'm definitely looking forward to the Imperial Dramon. And like you said, I do think Yellow's probably going to definitely fall by the wayside. I think a lot of the stuff that we're going to see from Yellow is going to be like the Joker stuff. It's going to be more yellow purple focused and playing around dual color stuff for sure. The Shine Greymon deck will definitely be around. I mean, everybody's been kind of hyping it up, especially, I mean, I'm all about Shine Greymon. It's my YouTube picture. It's like the Discord picture. I love Shine Greymon, but it's very much different than it is now. It's a very it's just going to be a different style of deck, but I don't think Shine Greymon's going to be like that meta defining deck. I think it's going to be like a tier 2, tier 2.5. Like it'll win games. It could probably top 16 an event if played, by like a really skilled player, but I don't think it's going to be like that deck where anybody can pick it up and start getting some wins. It's definitely going to be a deck that I feel like is a specialty deck where you kind of have to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are going to be, and then that's what's really going to bring Yellow down, just pure Yellow. Is
Yeah,
that just Shine
very
Greymon is
skilled.
going to be a very, very deck that you can't just play it very linearly. You're going to have to play each game like it's a build your own adventure where it's like, okay, what tamers am I getting out? How many tamers am I getting out? What cards are in my hand? Am I
Right.
bricking? Am I not bricking? All that stuff is going to be really different, and I think you are right with Yellow falling down, especially with the dual color. I think coming into BT7, we're going to just see an incredible amount of just dual color, and yeah, like I said, the modern era of Digimon will probably pass into a new modern era where dual color is more of a thing, and decks will probably be a little bit more explosive because of the ability to have multiple colors built into your deck.
Yeah, I do agree with that. It is shaping up to where a lot of their Bandai is pushing colors into their specific roles and how they're supposed to interact with other decks and how they're supposed to be. We see, dual colors coming up here in EXO1. And I think that's the foreseeable future. Outside of very, linear decks of they do this, they do that. BT7 is going to have, dual colors. BT8, we're going to see armor evolution across the board. That's going to be a deck that's going to be very, very good. Just having the ability to check a security. If it does die, just, trashing the top card, keeping board presence. It's going to be one of those things to where we might see a gigantic shift from here to BT7 and then
Hmm.
BT7 to BT8. We might see just, the evolution of Digimon being dual colors all the way across the board. And if you're not playing a deck that's playing dual colors, you're really not playing the deck at all.
Yeah, you're playing the Shine Greymon deck we were talking about.
Correct.
Yeah, because I
Maybe a
mean,
shine might be yellow red.
I feel like even no matter what, you're probably going to be playing dual color. I mean, even if you think about it, like the decks that are going to move on from this era to the next era, let's say Imperial Dramon, because Imperial Dramon's been getting a lot of support pretty much for the next
Mhm.
multiple sets. Even now, let's look at current Imperial Dramon. It's still kind of a dual color deck. You're still playing green champions and green megas. You're going along with the Davis, so it's going to be like it's going to be very similar, except it's all going to be in one card. Davis is going to be insane come Imperial
Oh
Jamon
yeah.
starter deck. It'll be one of the most consistent cards forever. I think that's why we see Davis starting to go up in price. It's also a card that people aren't really willing to trade because Davis is now a card that's pretty much going to be a staple forever. It was, but the dual color being blue and green just makes Davis going to be insane. So like the dual color stuff is something that I'm just very very excited for myself to start digging into on like a tournament level because I really want to see how this is going to build because once you add that second color dynamic, the deck building process is going to get a lot more complicated and it's really going to start rewarding players who have like a deep understanding of how the game works and how all of their matchups go. And that's what I'm all about. I'm all about that consistency and player advantage for putting in the time to like understand those things and I think the dual color does a really good job at that.
Yeah, I do agree. I think Digimon wanted to start off very simplistic just to try to get their player base into the game.
Hmm.
But now with the introduction of, Jorger's Evolution, with the introduction of dual colors, it's now more skill intensive and the ceiling is going to be very, very high for a lot of these dual decks, the dual
Hmm.
color decks, to really bring out the best of it. I really think the only color that going forward we might not see splash dual colors is black. But even black with the X antibody stuff is going to be very, very good. I know there's a black red, black war Greymon deck that a lot of people going to be trying out.
Hmm.
But outside of just pure black, I think every other color, and if in order for it to be viable, is going to be dual colors, whether it's blue yellow, whether it's blue green, whether it's, armor evolution with the duals, whether it's, yellow purple, or whether it's, red blue, or it's going to be one of the things to where everybody's going to have to pretty much pick one or two, combination of colors and kind of stick to it for, a bit long chunk of time just to get to know the ins and outs of every avenue you can take with that deck.
Hmm.
Because having a card dual color and having a Digivolution line that's dual color, you have twice the card pool now. So many different combinations of option cards and trainer cards and just everything that you can possibly and Tamer card and everything you can possibly just put into the deck and the ratios and it's going to get a lot more skill intensive and all the skill cap for every deck is just going to skyrocket. It's going to
Hmm.
blow the roof off of what we even know today.
Yeah, I agree. So we should start getting into the wrapping up of the show. So I do have one question I'd like to get your opinion on before we do wrap up, and that is, what do you think about? Since we were talking about the health of the game and everything going forward, I do think this is a big portion of that. So what do you think about like a mulligan system or a sideboard or stuff like that has been a big topic of discussion for Digimon players because there have been some inconsistencies in players bricking. In my opinion, I feel like players brick way less in this game than most other games because there is just an insane amount of draw in this game by having the draw for Digivolution. But what do you think about that idea of having either a mulligan system, having a sideboard for matches like Yu-Gi-Oh does. Do you think those things? Would you want either of those things? Do you think either of them would be good or bad, or what do you think about that?
Well, and this is coming from somebody who's played 8 different TCGs from Magic to Yu-Gi-Oh, from Pokemon to Digimon, Buddy Fight, all that kind of stuff. So the Mulligan system, if the Mulligan system was anything like Dragon Ball, to where you can take certain number of cards and put it to the bottom of your deck and then draw the same number of cards you only mulligan once that way. I think here in Digimon that would be more balanced, just for the simple fact that Digimon does not search through their deck. They only search off the top cards of their deck. So it's almost like once you put them cards at the bottom of your deck, chances are, unless you play a deck like Eosmon that constantly searches through their deck like 19 times over a course of a game, you're not going to see them cards anymore. Like period.
Yeah.
So I think that would be, if you want to do a mulligan system, that would be the perfect mulligan system. If besides that, I don't think it needs a mulligan system, but I do want to call for a sideboard. A sideboard, a side deck, whatever you want to call it. Maybe 15 to 20 cards, because there's so many cards in this game. I think we have to be probably over, you know, 3,000-4,000 just different cards in Digimon so far, for what the OCG has revealed and what they have. So it's one of those things to where you don't want a lot of these cards to go by the wayside. They're very niche. They only really work for certain matchups. And I think having a side deck of 15, 20 cards, especially if you do go to a best 2 out of 3, would be absolutely perfect. It gives, niche cards that like, it deletes only, 4,000 on lower DP Digimon,
Yeah.
or, some of these, starter deck cards like in the Gallantmon, deck, to where it's like, oh, I only pop 4,000 less. Or, oh, I only pop 3,000 less. It's like, that's okay against the Rookie Rush matchup. But against most other decks, that's not really going to make too much of a difference. So you really don't play them. But if
Yeah.
you have them in a sideboard, especially playing a Gallantmon deck, and you go up against a rookie rush player, you can then side those in to side out a lot of things that may not work, or it's really, only deleting one Digimon versus a plethora of Digimon. Then we can go ahead and start getting those
Yeah.
kind of cards out there. Like perfect example is Volcandramon. I'm pretty sure
Yeah. The pop all the 4Ks or less.
right. Playing that in a normal deck, nobody's gonna really play it. But if you're playing up against Rookie Rush, especially if you're playing red, you would side that in and side out maybe a War Greymon or a Gallantmon or two, and say, okay, if this player does go in and I have this Volcandramon in my hand, I'm going to drop it and wipe their board. Sure, they get 10 memory or 9 memory, but I wiped the complete board, and now they only have 2, 3 cards in hand. Are they really gonna put 2, 3 more Digimon on board? Okay, now I'm gonna start, building up my Digimon, my Digivolution line, and start popping their, little weenies from there while attacking with a +1 security. So yeah, I think a sideboard is really, really called for Digimon, especially with a lot of locals playing best 2 out of 3, and in top 8 or top 16, they play best 2 out of 3. I really do think, 'cause then you see the brain of the players, really shine in the sideboarding
Yeah, I agree.
of what the weaknesses of the deck is, and how can I patch up the weaknesses with my side deck and vice versa.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like on an agreement and on the other end at the same time. I have also played a multitude of card games. I've been competing. I mean, I started competing for Yu-Gi-Oh! 17, 18 years ago now. So since I was like 7 or 8. So like I've been playing card games forever. And I had a long stint of playing Yu-Gi-Oh competitively for like 6, 7 years, and during the time of me playing it, I was always never the biggest fan of side decking. I don't really remember exactly why I wasn't a fan of it, but now that I'm like almost a decade removed of my hardcore Yu-Gi-Oh days now, I really value the side deck because like I said before earlier in the podcast, I really do like when players who put in the work, who studied, who understand the game, understand matchups, understand their game plans, I like that getting rewarded. And that was one of the things now that I look at sideboarding was, I mean, you talk about cards that are like not very used as much. I mean, if you look at a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh sideboards, especially back in the day, you would see cards that you would never ever see in a main deck, but people sideboard them because they're good in specific matchups. And so I do think that the sideboard does add a lot of like of that skill to the game. I don't know how I feel about a sideboard in Digimon. I definitely think you would. I don't know if you'd go all the way up to like 15 or 20 cards. I think maybe like 10 cards, or else then you can just really play anything in your sideboard if you get too much. But I think that either of them are nice. Right now we see online regionals and Grand Prix and stuff like that not having the top cut right now, mostly for like time constraint and stuff. And I think for those type of scenarios, something like a mulligan, just for higher consistency would be good, because it's like, okay, you make it to a game 3 round, it's round 4 of 9, you're in game 3 and you open your opening hand and it's absolute like brick central, and then you lose and now you have your one loss and there's no top cut, so like the best you can do is like top 8 and not win and stuff like that. And that stuff like that's not as fun. But I think in those type of scenarios, the like the top cut lists where like one loss is really bad, I think in that scenario mulligans would be nice. And that's where I like to see the mulligan from, is just from somebody who's played multiple online regionals. The consistency that you need to go XO all the time is very high, and so bricking can be really bad. But I think in a scenario where we're having, like, let's say we go to nationals and it's like 9 rounds into a top 32 or something like that, and there I think a sideboard would be really nice. You don't need as much consistency. If you take a loss, you'll be okay, but like you said, the sideboard is really going to help those players who have a better understanding, who really know what's going on, and that's something that I'm all about. So I'd really be down with either. I think I've kind of leaned more towards the mulligan side of it so far, up to this point. But like I said, I've come to realize the what I enjoyed so much about the side deck of Yu-Gi-Oh, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of it when I played. I really see that it just rewards game knowledge, and I think if you're trying to have a competitive game, you should always reward game knowledge, because to get game knowledge, you have to put a lot of time in, and those who put in a lot of time should get rewarded.
Exactly. I do agree with that. I think Bandai's on the right track with how, they structured the game, how they made it to where, the super rares really, you can revolve any deck around the super rare, and it will actually, take you very far. It binds in with the color and the concept of the color very well. I really do think we're at a very healthy state. Even going in, for Super Future into BTA, there's no real, like, absolute dominant deck like we saw
Yeah.
in,
Hmm.
BT5 with Lord Nightmon. Everything is pretty spread out, it's pretty, across the board. Every deck has its worst matchup, it has its best matchups. So yeah, I really do think we're in a good state as of right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a good state regardless of a mulligan or a sideboard. I just think it's with just the nature of the game, where you kind of need a rookie and you need a champion, you need ultimate, all that stuff to really get things going. That's where I like the idea of a mulligan, because it's just like, okay, I open my hand and I have like 3 ultimates, a mega, and an option card. So if I don't top deck a rookie into a champion, I'm in big trouble. But like we talked about with the memory boost later, there is such a high. Like, there's a lot of cards coming in that will add consistency to the deck, where you may have like one dead turn where you're playing a memory boost, so that way you can search and you're not able to play anything else. But then in the next turn, you have better things going. So I do think that even without a mulligan or a sideboard, that game will be okay, just because there is just a high amount of consistency cards. We're gonna have even more consistency cards coming out later. So I think the whole mulligan thing only matters on the very first turn, just because after that you can kind of work around it. It becomes a deck building thing. It's like if you're bricking that many turns, maybe you need to look at your deck and add some more consistency stuff to it. It's obviously all relative and it depends on the deck and all that stuff, but I do think we are in a pretty healthy spot regardless of that. And going forward, it really just gets it gets better. We'll have to see how the EX2 stuff comes out and how that is. Nothing in there is really shouting to me like this is gonna be like game defining, like number one unbeatable type stuff. So I think we're looking pretty good. We'll see how the game keeps going forward. They keep adding all these new interesting things, dual colors, Jogris, we have Mother D Reaper, all these very interesting things that I think are going to add a lot of dynamics to the game that will only make it a better metagame. The more options that you have as far as a fundamental card level, the better the game gets, because like we said with Jessamon, it's very one-dimensional, but once you start having dual colors and Jogris and all the stuff like that, it comes anything but one-dimensional. Every deck becomes
Correct.
always essentially is two-dimensional before the game even starts. And so I do think that's really, yeah, I have to agree with you. That is very good. It's going to be very healthy. I do think that regardless of the mulligan thing or not, which I do believe they had a poll asking if that was something players wanted, if I remember correctly. So maybe we might
Yes.
see a mulligan in the future at some way. Maybe it's like Dragon Ball Super. Who knows? But I just wanted to see what your thoughts were going to be on that. But we did hit the hour mark, so we'll go ahead and wrap up here. If you enjoyed, I want everybody to leave a like and leave a comment down below, because we really want to try and get this going and try and build it and try to grow upon this. This is going to be the first episode. We are going to do our best to have this here weekly for you all, where we will just be talking about the game and everything. We do have a call of action for you all. If you have any questions for us at all, anything about deck building, the game, future meta games, anything related to the card game, if you have any questions, be sure to leave them down below. And at the end of each episode, Dante and I are going to take 1, 2, maybe 3 questions, answer them for you into the deepest depths that we can for you, and answer that for you. But with that being said, Dante, you have any final closing words for our very first episode?
You know what? I enjoy doing this. We're gonna do this every week.
Yeah, this was fun. Time went by way faster than I expected. I'm gonna be completely honest. I think me and Dante went into this expecting 30 minutes, 40 minutes. We went an hour
Yeah.
deep, and it's the point now where we're just running out of time in general. So we could keep going. We could have kept going for another hour, I'm sure, but we will be having this coming once, maybe twice a week, depending on how we want to do the podcast. But as of right now, we don't have anything set in stone. We can talk about that in the future podcast as we get it going. But we'd love your feedback. We'd love to know the things you liked, the things you didn't like. Maybe one person was too quiet, one person was too loud, anything like that. Let us know down below. But this is going to be our first debut episode of the Delicate Plan podcast. I am Primitive. I'm joined by Dante. We will see you next week. I hope you have a great day. Peace out.
See ya.